Welcome to Phantoms of the Past, where we explore the quieter corners of the past as you drift toward peaceful rest. Before we begin our story, a gentle content warning. Tonight's episode explores the age of lobotomy, a complex period of medical history involving nobility, power, and profound human struggle. While we'll examine these events with appropriate care for our historical setting, some viewers might find the subject matter unsettling. We'll focus on the historical context and verified facts, carefully separating truth from sensationalism and avoiding graphic details. Our journey seeks to understand, to remember, and to learn, approaching this delicate chapter of medical history with respect, nuance, and compassionate insight. As night settles around you, let the gentle sounds of rainfall guide us back through time, to an era when medicine stood at the crossroads of desperation and discovery. The year is 1935. And in psychiatric hospitals across America and Europe, the soft footsteps of doctors and nurses echo through long corridors, each step carrying the weight of uncertainty. Allow your mind to drift with us, like autumn leaves on a gentle breeze, as we explore these halls of memory. The psychiatric hospitals of the 1930s were places of both hope and desperation. Behind thick stone walls, weathered by decades of sun and rain, thousands of patients struggled with conditions that medicine barely understood. The gentle tick of wall clocks marked endless hours as doctors searched for answers to the mysteries of the troubled mind. Each tick, each tock, counting moments in lives suspended between illness and understanding. Listen to the sounds of these institutions, their quiet rhythms floating through time like whispers in an empty room. The soft creaking of wooden floors beneath nurses' feet, the distant closing of heavy doors, the muted conversations that drift down high-ceilinged corridors. These sounds create a lullaby of sorts, a gentle symphony of institutional life that continues day and night, season after season. In these halls, overcrowding had become a critical issue. Ward after ward filled with patients suffering from conditions we now know as schizophrenia, severe depression, and bipolar disorder. The gentle rustle of bed sheets in the night mixed with the soft sighs of restless sleepers, creating a nocturnal chorus that echoed through the buildings like distant waves upon a shore. The treatments available were limited and often cruel. Insulin shock therapy, where patients were deliberately sent into diabetic comas. Fever therapy, which involved raising body temperatures to dangerous levels, and hydrotherapy, where patients endured hours of ice baths or scalding water. The quiet drip of water from therapy rooms created a steady rhythm, like rain against window panes, marking time in these halls of healing and harm. In the early morning hours, when dawn's first light barely touched the high windows, the hospitals would begin their daily routines. The soft squeak of wheeled beds along linoleum floors marked the passing of time. Nurses in starched white uniforms moved quietly through the wards, their shoes making gentle clicking sounds against the floor. The air carried the sharp scent of antiseptic, mingling with the morning breeze that drifted through partially opened windows. Picture these corridors, their walls painted in soft, institutional colors, pale greens and muted beiges that seemed to absorb both light and sound. The high ceilings disappeared into shadow, while tall windows let in shafts of dusty sunlight that moved slowly across the floors like sundials, marking the passage of hours. Family members would visit when allowed, their whispered conversations mixing with the ambient sounds of institutional life. Their footsteps would echo differently, hesitant, uncertain, as they made their way through unfamiliar corridors. They sought answers, hope, any sign of improvement in their loved ones' conditions. The medical staff, armed with limited understanding and fewer options, could offer little comfort beyond their gentle presence and practiced words of reassurance. As evening approached, the quality of light would change, casting longer shadows through the ward windows. The soft clink of dinner trays would echo through the halls, followed by the quiet murmur of evening medications being distributed. Patients would settle into their beds, some peacefully, others with the restlessness that only night can bring. In the quiet hours of night, the sounds of these hospitals changed. The muffled cries of disturbed patients echoed through darkened corridors like distant waves breaking on an unseen shore. The shuffling footsteps of night nurses making their rounds provided a steady rhythm to the darkness, their soft shoes marking time like a gentle metronome. The medical understanding of mental illness in the 1930s was fundamentally different from what we know today. In the quiet studies of neurologists and psychiatrists, lit by the warm glow of desk lamps, theories about the relationship between brain structure and behavior were just beginning to emerge. Like shadows in dim light, these theories would soon take shape in ways that would forever change the landscape of psychiatric medicine. Through these halls drifted countless stories, each patient carrying their own narrative like a silent shadow. The businessman whose depression had rendered him unable to work, his once busy days now measured in the slow ticking of ward clocks. The young mother whose anxiety had transformed into paralyzing fear, her world shrinking to the size of a hospital room. The talented artist whose schizophrenia had turned his world into a landscape of terror, his visions now confined to the shadows of institutional nights. Listen to the sound of rain against the windows, its gentle pattern a reminder of how time flows ever forward. In these halls, doctors like Walter Freeman walked their daily rounds, their white coats catching the dim light as they moved from ward to ward. Each step carried the weight of responsibility and the burden of limited options, each footfall echoing with the hope of finding answers in the faces of their patients. As night deepens around you now, let the gentle rhythms of this historical journey lull you toward rest. The sounds of these old hospitals, the quiet footsteps, the distant doors, the soft sighs of sleeping patients, create a lullaby of remembrance. Like the eternal cycle of rain falling from sky to earth, these memories flow through time, carrying with them the weight of human experience and the endless search for understanding. Let your thoughts drift with these echoes from the past, floating like autumn leaves on a quiet pond. The story of psychiatric medicine in the 1930s reminds us of how far we've come, even as it soothes us with its distant rhythms and forgotten sounds. As you rest now, perhaps slipping towards sleep, know that these memories continue their gentle flow through time, like a river moving ever forward into night. The soft patter of rain continues, washing away the years between then and now, creating a bridge of sound that connects us to those distant days. Rest easy, knowing that medical science has moved far beyond these primitive beginnings, yet understanding that each era carries its own wisdom, its own lessons, its own quiet songs of healing. Through these halls, doctors like Walter Freeman walked their daily rounds, their white coats catching the dim light as they moved from ward to ward. But across the Atlantic, another physician was about to change the course of psychiatric medicine forever. In the laboratories of Portugal, a different kind of quiet filled the air. Here, neurologist Egas Moniz worked late into the night, the soft scratching of his pen documenting observations that would change psychiatric medicine forever. The gentle glow of his desk lamp cast warm shadows across pages of careful notes, while outside his window, the ancient streets of Lisbon settled into evening's embrace. Already renowned for developing cerebral angiography, a technique for visualizing blood vessels in the brain, Moniz believed he had found something even more significant. The quiet ticking of his office clock marked the hours as he refined his theories, each second bringing him closer to a discovery that would echo through medical history. His theory, developed through careful observation and study, suggested that certain mental illnesses might be caused by fixed circuits in the frontal lobes of the brain. Like a record player stuck in a groove, these circuits created repetitive thoughts and behaviors. And like a gardener pruning unwanted growth, Moniz believed these circuits could be surgically interrupted. The soft rustling of papers filled these late-night hours as Moniz reviewed his research. Through careful study of brain anatomy and function, he had come to believe that mental illness resided in specific pathways, like tangled threads that could be carefully unknotted. His desk held sketches of the human brain, each one marked with careful notations in his flowing script. Working with his surgical partner, Almeida Lima, they spent countless hours in preparation. The hospital's corridors would grow quiet as evening approached, but light still spilled from their laboratory as they refined their technique. Their whispered conversations echoed softly off the tile walls as they discussed their plans, their hopes, their concerns. November 1935 brought the culmination of their preparations. In an operating room where morning sunlight cast long shadows across tiled floors, they prepared for their first procedure. The gentle clicking of surgical instruments being arranged created a quiet symphony of anticipation. Their first patient lay sedated, unaware they were about to become part of medical history. The procedure itself was conducted in near silence. Initially, Moniz used alcohol injections to destroy specific areas of the frontal lobes. The steady rhythm of the patient's breathing provided a gentle backdrop to their work. Each movement was measured, each step carefully considered. The procedure involved drilling small holes in the skull, each motion precise and calculated. As the weeks passed, Moniz refined his approach. The development of the leucotome, a specialized tool featuring a hollow cylinder with a retractable wire loop or blade, marked a significant advancement. In the quiet of his workshop, he had carefully designed this instrument to more precisely cut neural pathways. Each evening, he would make small adjustments to the design, seeking perfection in every detail. The operating room became a sanctuary of sorts, where the subtle sounds of medical progress played out like a carefully orchestrated performance. The soft footsteps of nurses, the quiet clink of instruments, the gentle murmur of vital sign readings, all blended together in a hushed atmosphere of scientific discovery. Between November 1935 and February 1936, Moniz and his team performed 20 operations. Each procedure followed the same careful routine. Early morning preparation would begin as the first light touched the hospital windows. The operating room would slowly come to life, filled with the quiet efficiency of medical staff preparing for the day's work. Their patients came from various backgrounds, each bringing their own story of suffering. Some struggled with overwhelming depression that had resisted all other treatments. Others fought against anxiety that had imprisoned them in their own minds. Still others faced the daily battle of obsessive thoughts that circled endlessly, like autumn leaves in a whirlwind. The results of these first procedures offered glimpses of hope. About 2/3 of their patients showed improvement in their symptoms. In the recovery wards, nurses noted changes: a lifting of depression's heavy veil, a calming of anxious thoughts, a breaking of obsessive patterns. Each small victory was carefully documented in Moniz's flowing handwriting. Evening would often find him at his desk, reviewing the day's work by lamplight. The soft scratching of his pen would continue late into the night as he recorded every detail, every observation, every small sign of progress or concern. His notes would later form the foundation for papers that would capture the attention of the medical world. The quiet dedication of these early days would soon ripple outward, touching hospitals and medical practices across the globe. But here, in these peaceful evening hours in Lisbon, Moniz could not have known the full impact his work would have on the future of psychiatric medicine. As winter deepened, their technique grew more refined. The leucotome's design evolved, becoming more precise, more efficient. Each modification was tested with the utmost care, each improvement noted with scientific precision. The soft metallic sounds of surgical steel became a familiar melody in their operating room. The hospital staff moved with quiet efficiency around these procedures. Nurses prepared patients with gentle competence, their soft voices offering comfort and reassurance. Assistants arranged instruments with practiced care, each item placed just so, ready for the surgeon's hand. The rhythmic sounds of medical monitors provided a steady backdrop to their work. In the recovery rooms, patients rested in the gentle quiet of healing. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting warm patterns across clean white beds. The soft rustle of nurses' uniforms and the distant sounds of hospital life created a peaceful atmosphere where transformation could begin. Moniz's careful documentation continued through these months of discovery. His desk became a repository of knowledge, each page filled with observations that would help shape the future of psychiatric treatment. The quiet hours of evening were his time for reflection, for understanding, for planning the next careful steps forward. As you rest now, picture those early days of discovery, the careful hands moving with surgical precision, the hushed voices of medical staff, the soft footfalls in long hospital corridors. Let these historical echoes carry you towards sleep, like gentle thoughts, drifting through time. The story of these first leucotomies continues to flow through medical history, carrying both promise and warning in its current. The procedures developed in those quiet Portuguese operating rooms would soon touch thousands of lives, though in ways that Moniz could never have anticipated. As you drift toward sleep, consider how these moments of medical history float through time. The soft sounds of surgical instruments, the quiet breathing of patients, the scratching of pen on paper, all these create a lullaby of scientific discovery, a gentle reminder of humanity's constant search for understanding. Let the quiet dedication of these early researchers guide you toward peaceful dreams, their careful methods and patient observations becoming part of the endless flow of medical progress. Rest now, knowing that each discovery, each careful step forward, contributes to our understanding of the human mind. These early experiments in Lisbon would soon catch the attention of an ambitious American neurologist whose vision would transform this Portuguese procedure into something both revolutionary and controversial. In Washington, D.C., where evening shadows crept across the marble steps of medical institutions, Walter Freeman first encountered Moniz's work in medical journals that crossed his desk. The soft rustling of pages filled his office as he studied the Portuguese doctor's results with growing excitement. Each turn of a page brought new possibilities, new hopes for treating the mentally ill who filled America's overcrowded institutions. Freeman, already established as a respected neurologist at George Washington University Hospital, saw in these papers the potential for revolutionary change in psychiatric treatment. His office, lined with medical texts and patient files, became a sanctuary where he would spend long hours studying Moniz's techniques, the gentle ticking of his wall clock marking time as his vision for American psychiatric surgery took shape. But Freeman knew his limitations. Despite his enthusiasm and neurological expertise, he lacked the surgical skills necessary to perform the delicate brain operations Moniz described. His search for a surgical partner led him to James Watts, a skilled neurosurgeon whose steady hands and precise technique would complement Freeman's ambitious vision. Their partnership began in 1936 in the quiet surgical wings of George Washington University Hospital. Watts brought the technical precision that Freeman's vision required. Together, they spent countless hours modifying Moniz's procedure, developing what they would call the precision method of prefrontal lobotomy. The refinement of their technique was meticulous. Through careful study and practice, they developed a standardized approach that differed from Moniz's original procedure. Their version of the lobotomy involved drilling 6 precise holes in the skull, 3 on each side. The measurements were exact, each mark carefully placed with scientific precision, 3 centimeters above the midpoint of the zygomatic arch for the first hole, 3 centimeters above that for the second and the third at the same height, but 3 centimeters toward the midline. In the operating room, their teamwork created a quiet symphony of medical precision. Watts's skilled hands would guide the surgical instruments while Freeman directed the procedure. The soft clicking of surgical tools against steel trays marked the rhythm of their work, while the steady breathing of their sedated patients provided a gentle backdrop to their groundbreaking procedures. Their first patients were carefully selected from local psychiatric institutions. Each case was documented with meticulous care, Freeman's flowing handwriting filling page after page with observations. The quiet hours of evening would often find him at his desk, reviewing patient outcomes and refining their approach. As their experience grew, so did their confidence. By 1942, Freeman had performed over 200 lobotomies. The procedure gained attention in medical circles, drawing observers from hospitals across the country. The quiet whispers of success began to spread through the halls of American psychiatric institutions, carrying hope to wards filled with patients who had exhausted all other treatment options. Freeman's enthusiasm for the procedure grew with each operation. He saw in every success story the potential to help more patients, to reach more institutions, to spread this new treatment across America. His vision extended beyond the confines of his Washington practice, reaching toward every psychiatric hospital in the nation. This drive led to the creation of his Lobotomobile, a vehicle that would carry him and his instruments across the country. Like a medical missionary, Freeman traveled from hospital to hospital, demonstrating his technique to other doctors and institutions. The steady hum of tires on American highways became the soundtrack to his mission of spreading psychiatric surgery across the nation. In each new hospital he visited, Freeman would set up his equipment in operating rooms that varied from state-of-the-art surgical suites to simple hospital rooms. The familiar routine of preparing instruments, positioning patients, and demonstrating his technique played out again and again, like a carefully choreographed performance. His demonstrations drew both acclaim and concern from the medical community. Some doctors saw in his work the potential for treating previously hopeless cases. Others expressed quiet reservations about the procedure's irreversible nature. Yet Freeman's confidence never wavered, his belief in the procedure's benefits growing stronger with each successful operation. Through city and countryside, his lobotomobile carried him to psychiatric institutions where patients waited in quiet desperation. The vehicle became a symbol of hope for some, of controversy for others. Inside its carefully packed compartments, Freeman stored the tools of his trade. Surgical instruments that would transform hundreds of lives, for better or worse. The steady growth of his practice brought both recognition and scrutiny. By day, he performed operations with practiced efficiency. By night, he documented his cases, his pen scratching quietly across paper as he built a record of his work. Each case added to his growing conviction that he had found a solution to one of medicine's most challenging problems. In psychiatric wards across America, the news of Freeman's work spread like whispers in quiet corridors. Families of patients began to seek him out, traveling long distances with hope in their hearts. His reputation grew, and with it, the number of procedures he performed. The medical community watched with mixed reactions as Freeman's influence spread. His technique, while based on Moniz's work, had evolved into something distinctly American, more standardized, more efficient, and according to Freeman, more effective. The soft murmur of medical conferences carried both praise and criticism of his methods. As you rest now, picture those early days of American psychiatric surgery. The quiet concentration of operating rooms, the careful measurements, the precise movements of skilled hands. Let these historical moments drift through your mind like gentle clouds across an evening sky. Consider how Freeman's dedication, despite future controversies, shaped the landscape of psychiatric treatment in America. His tireless travels across the country, spreading his technique from hospital to hospital, would change thousands of lives in ways that even he could not have predicted. The steady rhythm of his work continues to echo through medical history, a reminder of how conviction and controversy often travel hand in hand. As you drift towards sleep, let these echoes of medical history remind us of humanity's endless quest to understand and heal the troubled mind. In the quiet of night, the story of Freeman's early work whispers to us across time, carrying both the hope of his vision and the weight of its consequences. Rest now, knowing that each chapter of medical history, whether triumphant or troubling, adds to our understanding of the complex relationship between innovation and responsibility. As Freeman's influence grew, so did his desire to simplify the procedure. In the quiet of his study, surrounded by patient files and medical texts, he began to envision a faster, more direct approach, one that would change the landscape of psychiatric surgery forever. The most significant evolution in the procedure came in 1945, as autumn leaves drifted past the windows of Freeman's study. Surrounded by medical texts and patient files, their pages softly rustling in the evening air, he conceived of a faster, more direct approach to the lobotomy. Instead of drilling through the skull, he would access the frontal lobe through the eye socket. In the quiet hours of his research, Freeman's thoughts turned to simplification. The standard lobotomy, while effective, required an operating room, a skilled surgeon, and considerable time. In the peaceful solitude of his study, illuminated by the gentle glow of his desk lamp, he sketched his new ideas in flowing script. The inspiration for his new tool came from an unlikely source, an ice pick from his own kitchen. The slender instrument seemed to hold the answer he sought. Picture him in these moments of discovery, holding the ice pick up to the light, seeing in its simple form the potential for medical revolution. The soft ticking of his study clock marked these moments of innovation. As the technique developed, Freeman refined his approach. The kitchen ice pick would soon give way to a specialized instrument called an orbitoclast. This new tool, crafted to his specifications, would transform psychiatric surgery. Its surgical steel gleamed under operating room lights, a symbol of modernization in psychiatric treatment. The procedure itself was remarkably quick, often taking less than 10 minutes. Freeman would begin by inducing unconsciousness through electroshock. The quiet hum of the electroshock machine would fill the room momentarily, followed by deeper silence. Then, with practiced precision, he would lift the patient's upper eyelid. The orbitoclast's entry through the eye socket required both delicacy and decisiveness. Freeman would position the instrument with careful attention, the room silent, save for the soft breathing of attending nurses. A gentle tap with a small hammer would breach the orbital plate, a sound that echoed softly through operating rooms across America. The final motion, a swift, controlled lifting movement, would sever the neural connections in the frontal lobe. This moment, this simple gesture, would irreversibly alter the patient's brain structure. The hushed voices of attending nurses monitored vital signs, their whispered updates floating through the still air. Unlike the complex operating theaters of today, Freeman's procedure required minimal equipment. No banks of monitoring machines, no complex surgical tools. The simplicity allowed him to work in varied settings, from proper hospital rooms to more unusual locations. Each space would be transformed by his presence into an impromptu operating theater. State hospital corridors became surgical suites. Small offices were converted into treatment rooms. Even motel rooms during his travels would serve as temporary medical facilities. The modest cost, approximately $250, made the procedure accessible to many families seeking help for their loved ones. In these varied settings, Freeman maintained his routine. The soft clink of his instruments being arranged, the quiet murmur of preparatory instructions, the gentle sounds of medical practice would transform each space. His confidence in the simplified procedure grew with each successful operation. Through hospital corridors and down quiet roads, Freeman's reputation spread. Families who could never have afforded the standard lobotomy now had access to treatment. The whispered hopes of desperate relatives filled waiting rooms across the country. Each tap of his hammer, each swift motion of the orbitoclast, carried both promise and finality. The medical community watched with mixed reactions. Some praised the procedure's efficiency and accessibility. Others expressed concern about its simplification. Yet Freeman continued his work, his dedication unwavering. The gentle rustle of medical journals carried both acclaim and criticism of his methods. In psychiatric institutions where overcrowding created desperate conditions, Freeman's rapid procedure offered a kind of hope. The soft footsteps of nurses and orderlies would pause as he worked, their routines temporarily suspended as they witnessed this new approach to treatment. His patients came from all walks of life. The troubled daughter of a wealthy family, the agitated patient in a state hospital, the veteran struggling with trauma. Each procedure followed the same careful pattern, each tap of the hammer marking another attempt at healing. The orbitoclast itself became a symbol of this new era in psychiatric treatment. Its slender form, so different from traditional surgical instruments, represented a departure from conventional medical practice. The quiet gleam of surgical steel caught operating room lights as Freeman worked. As evening settled over each new location, Freeman would document his cases. The soft scratching of his pen marked the day's work, each patient's story carefully recorded. His notes would fill countless pages, creating a record of this revolutionary yet controversial procedure. Through the late 1940s and into the 1950s, the transorbital lobotomy spread across America. The steady rhythm of Freeman's work continued. The gentle positioning of the patient, the careful placement of the orbitoclast, the soft tap of the hammer. Each procedure added to his growing legacy. In recovery rooms, patients would wake to find themselves transformed. The quiet rustle of hospital sheets and the soft murmur of nurses' voices would greet them as they emerged from unconsciousness. Some would find peace, others vacancy. All would be forever changed. As you rest now, consider these moments of medical history. The simple tool that changed psychiatric practice, the quiet rooms where transformations occurred, the gentle sounds of hope and uncertainty mingling in the air. Let these historical echoes carry you towards sleep. The story of the transorbital lobotomy continues to whisper through time, a reminder of medicine's complex journey. The soft tap of Freeman's hammer still echoes in medical history, carrying both the weight of innovation and the burden of its consequences. Rest now, as these memories of medical progress drift through your mind. Let the quiet dedication of these pioneering days, despite their controversial nature, remind us of humanity's endless quest to understand and heal the troubled mind. Sleep peacefully, knowing that each chapter of medical history adds to our understanding, guiding us toward more humane treatments for those who suffer. As Freeman refined his transorbital technique, his growing confidence would lead to thousands of procedures, including 2 cases that would forever mark the history of psychiatric medicine. Perhaps no case better illustrates the procedure's impact than that of Rosemary Kennedy. In 1941, as autumn shadows lengthened across hospital grounds, the 23-year-old sister of future President John F. Kennedy entered the operating room. The quiet clicking of nurses' shoes on tile floors and the soft murmur of preparatory instructions filled the air as she was made ready for the procedure. Rosemary's story began long before this fateful day. Born into the prominent Kennedy family, she had struggled from an early age. The gentle whispers of family concerns echoed through their Brookline home. Her delayed development, her mood swings, her difficulty keeping pace with her ambitious siblings. In the quiet hours of family discussions, decisions were made that would alter her life forever. The Kennedy family, like many others, had been convinced that lobotomy might help normalize her behavior. Their hopes, carried on the soft rustling of consultation papers and medical recommendations, led them to Freeman's door. The procedure would cost them $250, a sum that meant little to the wealthy family, but would purchase devastating consequences. Freeman performed the procedure with his standard precision. The operating room held the same hushed anticipation that accompanied all his surgeries. The gentle clink of surgical instruments, the measured breathing of the medical team, the soft sounds of routine that belied the gravity of what was to come. The results were catastrophic. Rosemary emerged from the procedure severely incapacitated, unable to speak coherently. The quiet of her recovery room was broken only by confused utterances and the soft footsteps of concerned nurses. The vibrant young woman who had entered the hospital would never return. For the remainder of her life, Rosemary would require institutional care. The soft closing of her hospital room door would echo through decades of medical history. Her family, their hopes transformed into grief, would rarely speak of her fate. The Kennedy compound in Hyannisport would hold one empty chair at family gatherings, a silent testament to medicine's ability to harm as well as heal. Nearly 2 decades later, in 1960, another significant story would emerge. Howard Dully, at just 12 years old, became one of Freeman's youngest patients. The gentle rustling of hospital admission papers carried the weight of a childhood about to be irreversibly altered. His stepmother had brought him to Freeman, describing behavioral issues that today would be recognized as typical adolescent rebellion. Picture young Howard in those moments before the procedure. The quiet of the hospital room, the soft sounds of preparation, the unknowing innocence of a child about to undergo a profound transformation. For $200, his stepmother purchased a solution that would mark him forever. The morning of Howard's procedure dawned like any other. The hospital corridors held their usual quiet efficiency, nurses moving with practiced grace, the distant sounds of medical routine creating a backdrop to personal tragedy. Freeman prepared his instruments with the same careful attention he gave to all his cases. In the years that followed, Howard's life would unfold in unexpected ways. Unlike Rosemary Kennedy, he retained his ability to function independently, though the impact of the procedure would shadow his days. The soft echoes of his childhood experience would follow him through time, shaping his understanding of both medicine and human nature. Decades later, Dully would break the silence surrounding his experience. His voice, strong and clear, would carry across years of medical history. If you saw me walking down the street, you'd never know I had a lobotomy. These words would drift through time like autumn leaves, carrying both resilience and warning. His testimony provides a unique window into the procedure's lasting impact. Through Howard's story, we glimpse both the physical and emotional consequences of Freeman's work. The quiet strength in his voice as he shares his experience speaks to the human capacity for survival and adaptation. These two cases, Rosemary Kennedy and Howard Dully, represent different facets of the lobotomy's legacy. One shows its devastating potential for harm, the other demonstrates the resilience of the human spirit. Their stories intertwine through medical history like threads in a complex tapestry. In the quiet hours of night, their experiences continue to teach us. The soft whispers of their stories remind us of medicine's power to alter lives, for better or worse. Rosemary's silence and Howard's testimony create a harmony of warning that still resonates through hospital corridors. The Kennedy family's influence would eventually help shape mental health care in America. Though they couldn't change Rosemary's fate, their private grief would fuel public advocacy. The gentle turning of legislative pages and the quiet signing of new laws would gradually transform psychiatric care. Howard Dully's journey would lead him to become an advocate in his own right. His story, told in his memoir and through various interviews, sheds light on both the procedure's impact and the human capacity for recovery. The soft rustling of pages as people read his account carries hope and caution in equal measure. As you rest now, consider these two lives, so profoundly altered by medical history. Let their stories remind us of the complexity of human healing, the delicate balance between innovation and caution. The quiet lessons of their experiences continue to influence modern medical ethics. Their narratives flow through time like gentle streams, carrying wisdom for future generations. In the hushed corridors of modern hospitals, their experiences still whisper warnings about the need for careful consideration in medical treatment. Rest peacefully, knowing that their stories have helped shape a more ethical approach to psychiatric care. Let the quiet strength of Howard Dully and the silent testimony of Rosemary Kennedy guide medicine toward more humane treatments for troubled minds. The soft echoes of their experiences continue to influence medical practice, reminding us that behind every procedure, every medical decision, lies a human life worthy of protection and respect. Sleep now, carrying with you these important lessons from medical history. While these personal stories unfolded in private, the public face of the lobotomy was taking shape through newspapers and medical journals, creating a complex tapestry of hope and controversy. The media's role in the lobotomy era cannot be understated. As morning light filtered through windows across America, the soft rustle of newspapers being opened brought stories that seemed almost miraculous. Headlines in the 1940s proclaimed a new dawn in psychiatric medicine, their bold letters offering hope to families struggling with mental illness. "Science conquers mental illness," one headline might declare, while another promised, "New surgery brings peace to troubled minds." The gentle turning of pages in countless homes carried these messages of hope, each word carefully crafted to capture the public imagination. Breakfast tables across the nation became sites of quiet conversation about this revolutionary procedure. Freeman understood the power of the press with remarkable clarity. In his office at George Washington University, he would carefully prepare press releases, his fountain pen flowing across paper as he crafted narratives of scientific triumph. The soft scratch of his writing would continue late into evening hours as he documented success stories for eager journalists. The operating room became his stage. Photographers, their cameras clicking softly in the corner, captured images that would fill newspaper pages across the country. Freeman would pause during procedures, positioning himself just so, ensuring the images conveyed both scientific authority and medical drama. The quiet whir of camera mechanisms preserved moments that would later be viewed through very different lenses. Medical conferences provided another platform for Freeman's promotional efforts. In hushed auditoriums, hundreds of doctors would watch as he demonstrated his technique. The soft murmur of professional discussion would fill these spaces, some voices raised in praise, others lowered in concern. Each presentation added to the procedure's growing reputation. Before and after stories became a powerful tool in Freeman's arsenal. Carefully selected cases showed patients transformed, the violent becoming gentle, the depressed finding joy, the obsessed discovering peace. These narratives, told through newspaper features and medical journal articles, painted pictures of near miraculous recovery. Yet beneath the surface of media enthusiasm, complexity lurked like shadows in still water. Medical journals published detailed case studies, their pages filled with both promise and warning. Some doctors reported remarkable improvements in their patients, while others documented troubling changes in personality and function. In hospital waiting rooms across America, families faced impossible decisions. The gentle ticking of wall clocks marked hours of anguished discussion. Parents, children, spouses, all found themselves weighing desperate hope against uncertain risks. The soft scratch of pens signing consent forms marked moments of decision that could never be undone. Letters from this period, preserved in archives like delicate flowers pressed between pages, tell stories of profound human struggle. "My dear sister," one might begin, "we must decide about mother's treatment." The quiet anguish in these written words still echoes through time, carrying the weight of impossible choices. Professional medical opinions varied widely. In the halls of prestigious hospitals, doctors engaged in hushed debates about the procedure's merits. Some saw it as a revolutionary breakthrough, others as a dangerous oversimplification of complex mental conditions. The soft closing of office doors often marked the end of heated discussions that remained unresolved. Freeman's publicity machine continued its steady work through the 1940s. Each successful case was carefully documented, photographed, and shared with the press. The quiet hours of dark rooms developed images that would fill public consciousness. Freeman at work, his patients before and after, the seemingly simple solution to complex mental suffering. But as the years passed, different stories began to emerge. In quiet hospital rooms and private homes, families watched their loved ones navigate life after lobotomy. Some found the peace they sought, but others observed troubling changes, personality alterations, emotional flatness, lost capabilities. By the mid-1950s, the whispered stories of less successful outcomes began to grow louder. The vacant stares of some patients, their altered personalities, their lost capabilities, these realities began to overshadow the earlier promises of miraculous cures. Like evening shadows lengthening across a landscape, doubt crept into public consciousness. Medical journals, once filled with optimistic reports, began publishing more critical analyses. The soft turning of their pages revealed growing concerns about the procedure's long-term effects. Doctors who had once eagerly embraced the lobotomy started questioning its widespread use. In waiting rooms where hope had once flourished, new conversations took place. Families, better informed about potential risks, approached the procedure with increasing caution. The gentle tick of clocks still marked their deliberations, but now with a different weight. A deeper understanding of what might be lost. As you rest now, consider how public perception can shape medical history. The quiet rustle of old newspapers, the soft click of archived photographs, the gentle turning of medical journal pages, all tell a story of how society grapples with scientific innovation. The gentle flow of time carries these lessons forward, reminding us to approach medical innovation with both hope and careful consideration. Let these historical whispers guide you toward peaceful dreams, knowing that each generation learns from those who came before. But as public fascination with the procedure began to wane, a new chapter in psychiatric medicine was quietly emerging, one that would finally bring the age of the lobotomy to its close. The development of new psychiatric medications in the 1950s marked the beginning of the end for the lobotomy era. The soft clicking of pill bottles replaced the sound of surgical instruments in many psychiatric wards, their gentle rhythm signaling a profound shift in mental health treatment. Chlorpromazine, introduced in 1954, offered new hope for managing severe mental illness without irreversible surgical intervention. In hospital pharmacies across America, shelves once stocked with surgical supplies began filling with these new medications. The quiet rattling of pills in bottles became a sound of promise, each capsule containing possibilities that didn't require the permanent alteration of brain tissue. The gentle unscrewing of bottle caps replaced the sharp tap of surgical hammers. Yet, Freeman remained steadfast in his commitment to the lobotomy. Even as wards began emptying of surgical patients, their beds now filled with those receiving chemical treatments, he continued his work. The sounds of his practice became increasingly isolated, the lonely echo of his footsteps in corridors where colleagues once gathered to observe his technique. Through the late 1950s and into the 1960s, Freeman traveled America's highways in his lobotomobile, a solitary figure holding on to a fading practice. The quiet hum of his car's engine carried him from hospital to hospital, even as fewer and fewer opened their doors to his procedure. His final operation in 1967 ended in tragedy. The patient, suffering from a brain hemorrhage, did not survive. The soft closing of his surgical kit that day carried the weight of finality, not just the end of a procedure, but the conclusion of an era in psychiatric medicine. Today, walking through modern psychiatric hospitals, one encounters a completely different landscape. The gentle hum of advanced monitoring equipment fills the air where Freeman's tools once clicked against surgical trays. Soft electronic beeps mark patient vital signs, their steady rhythm a testament to how far medical technology has advanced. In these contemporary settings, treatment plans are crafted with careful consideration of both effectiveness and ethics. The quiet consultations between doctors and patients take place in comfortable offices, not preoperative rooms. Each treatment decision is weighed with an understanding born from the lessons of the past. The Nobel Prize awarded to Egas Moniz in 1949 stands as a complex milestone in medical history. Like shadows stretching across time, the decision to honor him for developing the lobotomy reflects both the hopes of an era and its limitations. In museum archives, the gentle rustle of award certificates carries whispers of achievement tinged with warning. Modern psychiatric care, with its array of treatment options, bears little resemblance to the era we've explored tonight. Brain science has advanced remarkably, offering insights that would have seemed like science fiction to Moniz and Freeman. The soft whirring of MRI machines illuminates the intricate structures of the brain, revealing complexities that the lobotomy's simple solution could never have addressed. But perhaps the most profound legacy of the lobotomy era lies in its impact on medical ethics. The experience led to stronger protections for patient rights, more rigorous standards for experimental procedures, and a deeper appreciation for the principle of first do no harm. These lessons echo through time like ripples in still water, touching each new generation of medical practitioners. In medical schools today, students learn about the lobotomy era not just as a chapter in psychiatric history, but as a fundamental lesson in medical ethics. The soft turning of textbook pages carries both historical fact and moral guidance. Each new doctor enters practice with an understanding of how innovation must be balanced with careful consideration of long-term consequences. Howard Dully's story has become a powerful testament to both the era's impact and human resilience. Now an adult, his voice joins others in ensuring these events are remembered not just as medical history, but as human experience. His testimony, along with those of other survivors and their families, drifts through time like autumn leaves, carrying wisdom for future generations. The estimated 40,000 Americans who underwent lobotomies represent not just statistics, but individual stories of hope, desperation, and consequence. Each procedure carried the weight of family decisions, medical judgment, and human trust. The quiet courage of these patients and their families continues to inform our understanding of medical ethics. In research laboratories across the world, scientists continue to study the brain with tools and techniques Moniz and Freeman could never have imagined. The gentle hum of advanced equipment marks progress in our understanding, each discovery adding to our knowledge of this most complex organ. Modern psychiatric treatment options reflect this deeper understanding. The soft voices of therapists, the careful dispensing of medications, the structured support of therapeutic communities, all these approaches grow from lessons learned during and after the lobotomy era. As you rest now, perhaps drifting towards sleep, consider how this chapter in medical history shapes our present understanding. The gentle progression of medical science continues, like waves lapping at a distant shore. Each generation of doctors learns from those who came before, building carefully on the foundation of past experience. Let your thoughts drift to the thousands of stories that make up this historical chapter. Each patient, each family, each medical decision adds to our understanding of both human vulnerability and resilience. Their experiences guide modern medicine toward more thoughtful, more ethical treatment approaches. The quiet of night settles around you as you reflect on this journey through medical history. The soft sounds of modern hospitals still echo with lessons learned from this era. As you drift towards sleep, know that medical science continues its careful progress, always seeking better ways to heal troubled minds. In the end, the story of the lobotomy reminds us that even the darkest chapters contain valuable lessons. Its legacy lives on in the careful protocols of modern medicine, in the ethical guidelines that protect patient rights, and in the thoughtful consideration that now precedes any new psychiatric treatment. Rest peacefully, knowing that each generation builds upon the knowledge of the past, learning from both its triumphs and its tragedies. The gentle progress of medical science continues, guided by the wisdom gained from experience and the commitment to more humane treatment of mental illness. Good night, dear listeners. May your dreams be peaceful, and may the whispers of history continue to guide us toward a more enlightened understanding of the human mind and its care.